I will begin our presentation. I would also like to introduce our other presenters. We have Mr. Scott Marr, who is our IT director, and we also have Mr. David Cedillo, who is our Public Works Director, and they will be having their presentations. I will be going first. So let's just jump into our proposed FY22 budget. This is our budget cover for our FY22 budget. This is, like I said, our proposed budget. Our theme for this year is Together We Can. We mostly chose this theme because of the COVID-19 pandemic that we have been going through the last year. In our proposed budget summary, we made no recommendations to council to increase our GRT or our property taxes for this next fiscal year. Due to the COVID-19 recession that we are currently in, we kept a very conservative budget this year. We did have some council priorities that we met with council, and all of those considerations for those priorities are in this budget and budgeted as well. We currently adopted our Elevate Las Cruces, which is our comprehensive plan, and recently the council adopted a new strategic plan, and all of these plans were budgeted in the budget this year as well. We took those into consideration. As far as budget development, these are guidelines that we received from the city manager. This year, the city management guidelines were for salaries and benefits. We increased the salaries by 2.5%. Any union negotiated contracts that we have, those are preset by that contract. All of those are budgeted. Those increases are budgeted as well. We are requesting, it says 3 new positions. However, these are part-time positions. There's 7 of them, 7 part-time positions that we are requesting become full-time. And so the reason, I'm sorry, not 7, 6, but the reason that it is only 3 new positions is because those 6 at halftime represent 3 full-time positions. There were quite a bit of reclasses. However, city management said we could only do the reclasses or budget the reclasses if the reclass increase on the budget was less than 10%. We do have a open salary savings. In the last couple of years, we've been budgeting an open salary savings of about $5 million. And then as far as the operating, we reviewed all of the department budgets, working with them to meet their performance strategic results, of course, align them with the Elevate Las Cruces, and also align with our new strategic plans. So jumping right in, this is our proposed FY22 all funds. We budget by the expenditures. These are in millions. As you can see, they're the fiscal year 21 original budget. We are currently in fiscal year 21. This is the original budget from last year. And then we have our FY 2022 proposed budget, the change, the difference, and then the percentage change. As you can see, there is, for the general fund, the expenditure proposed is $115.1 million. Other operating funds are funds that are still part of the general fund, but not our main general fund operating. And those are proposed as about $6 million. Special revenue funds are funds that have a specific purpose, that are aligned with either a resolution, an ordinance, a state statute. To give you an example, we receive property taxes for flood control. That is considered a special revenue. We receive funding for the fire fund, which comes from the state fire marshal. That is because it's tied to a state statute. It is considered a special revenue fund as well. Then we have our debt services. Our debt, as you can see, did not go up very much this year. It is proposed at 22 million. Capital projects is at 116 million. Our enterprise fund, which is utilities department, transit facility, and our airport, those are all enterprise funds. They're treated as if they were like a private business. They have a budget of 159.7 million. Internal services, these are sections or departments that provide a service to our departments within the city. That includes fleet services, which takes care of all of our vehicles, fire equipment, things like that. We also have other internal services such as workers' comp, our health, employee health plan. Those are internal services as well. Their proposed budget is 33.9. Then our trust and agency funds, we have a couple of agencies that we are their fiscal agent. These include such as South Central Solid Waste, Metro, MRVDA, and the Animal Service Center of Mesilla Valley. Their budget is 23.7 million together. With that, we have an all-fund expenditure citywide budget of 497.8 million. This is a graph of where the city budget overall is. As you can see, the largest slice of this pie is our enterprise fund. Then next you have our general fund, which is our operating, as I mentioned earlier, operating funds for most of all of the departments within the city. Capital projects are, both the general fund and capital projects are at 23%. Then we have internal services, trust and agencies at 7%, special revenue and debt services at 4%. Now I'm going to jump into our general fund. As I mentioned earlier, our general fund is the pool of funds that we use mostly for our city operating departments. As you can see, our FY21 budget, original budget was 97.01 million. We're requesting this year 115.12 million, which is a 19% increase. Our general fund summary, as you can see, breaking this down, we have a proposed beginning balance of about 41.5 million. Our revenues coming in are about 114.16 million. Our expenditures, 115.12 million. Transfers out, the net transfers, I should say, are about 19.45 million. That leaves us with an ending balance of 21.13 million. We are required by the state for a reserve of 1/12. The city a few years ago passed a resolution to have a second 1/12 for locally. So we do have a required 2/12 that we cannot spend. That is 19.19 million. So that leaves us with an unreserved balance of 1.94 million. So where our money comes from, this gives you an idea of our revenues. As you can see, the largest slice of this pie is our gross receipts tax. We're reliant heavily on gross receipts tax. Next, we have our property taxes, about 12%. Excise and other taxes, these are like our franchise fees that we have with several of the utilities such as Comcast, El Paso Electric. Other revenues come from fees and charges that the city charges, such as in community development, we have fees that we charge for permits, business licenses, things like that. Police has charges, you know, when they give out tickets. Parks and Rec leases out baseball fields, parks. These are all what we have in our other revenue. As far as internet sales tax, this is a fixed rate. As you can see, we receive about 2.15 million for internet sales tax. So this is where our money goes. As you can see, the largest slice of this pie is for personnel, which is our salaries and benefits at 72%. Next, we have operating at 27%. And then our capital, this is a smaller type capital. This is not part of our CIP, but smaller type capital at 1%. This gives you another graphical by departments of where our expenditures are going. As you can see, our largest chunk of money for the general fund is on emergency services, which is our police department, fire. Next, you have public works, quality of life, which is our museums, our library, and then of course the rest of the budget, they average around 5 million, 3 to 5 million. Wanted to give an overview. One of the several years ago, we passed a resolution to adopt a what we call the hold harmless GRT. It's the HHGRT. This is another gross receipts tax that we receive. Most of this was due because several years ago, the governor, back then Governor Richardson, passed where we were no longer going to be having sales tax on such things as medical and food. So in order to not lose that particular GRT, most of the cities in New Mexico adopted a hold harmless GRT, which is a 3/8% of 1%. And so for this hold harmless GRT, we have a proposed 22 beginning balance of 4.59 million. These are in millions. Revenue typically runs about 10 million, as you can see. Expenditures out of here, very few expenditures, 1.57. And then we have transfers out of 8.05 million. Most of those transfers are for capital and for debt. And then that gives us an ending balance of 5.29 million. This year, as we mentioned earlier, we have proposed several council priorities that we will be using the hold harmless for which equals about 2.78 million, giving us an unreserved available balance of 2.51 million. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Scott Marr, our IT director, to talk about his new pilot technology improvement plan. Scott?
Good morning. I am Scott Marr, Information Technology Director, and it's my pleasure this morning to provide you information on our pilot for our technology improvement plan. This plan is a key component of our technology governance program that we've established. The goal of the plan is to provide for better budgeting, planning, and management of technology-based solutions. Technology projects in this plan are focused on new business systems and applications that use web servers or database servers. The schedule of the plan parallels the capital improvement plan, capital improvement program schedule. And being a pilot this year, departments were asked to volunteer to participate in the process if they were planning on technology projects in FY22. So here's, actually, can you go to the next slide, Leanne? Because that one was, well, I guess my slides are out of order because it's supposed to be the TIP process. Did that get swapped around? I guess that's fine. So we'll go with this. As I mentioned, it follows the CIP process. So we have a pilot kickoff that started in October. In November, the forms were due to the business systems analysts. In December, our committees review the submittals and we prioritize the approved projects. January is our budget entry time. And then the TIP approval in May through the regular council budget approval process. Next slide. So the two programs that were, or the two projects, excuse me, that were approved for this, for FY22 that were submitted, both of them are out of quality of life for transit. So the first one is the Clever Devices replacement and upgrade for $277,045. The Clever Devices system is real-time bus location, time and schedule performance software. The other item from transit was a Dialeride customer software system for $70,155, which is basically customer software to help Dialeride users. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the Clever Devices replacement upgrade, this current version that Transit has is no longer supported and has to be converted to a new product called CleverWorks from the same company. This product, again, updates the GPS mapping and bus time webpage that gives real-time information to the public on the location of buses on their routes. And the software also tracks route and driver time performance, which is a measure for Transit's one of their strategic goals. Next slide, please. The Dialeride customer software, this is from a company called Trapeze, which provides this software. It's a notification software which enables the customers to book trips with call-in software, receive automatic notifications about their upcoming trips. It gives the clients the ability to cancel their trips and receive reminders of booked trips. So this product frees up dispatchers and assists in their operations. And with that, I'll hand it over to David Cedillo, who will be talking about the Capital Improvement Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, Las Cruces. My name is David Cedillo, and I'm the Public Works Director, and I'll be going over the Capital Improvement Program for you this morning. So why do we have a Capital Improvement Program? It is outlined in our city charter in Article 5 under Financial Procedures, and specifically in Section 5.05. Each year, the city manager shall submit to council for approval and submission of a budget and a 5-year capital improvement program. The capital improvement program is also required by the Department of Finance and Administration to be eligible to participate in the 2022 legislative session. It'll help garner and obtain legislative, grant, federal, or New Mexico Finance Authority funding. It also aligns with our peak performance and council approved initiatives, as Ms. Leanne Demush had mentioned prior, our Elevate Las Cruces and our comp plan. Through the process, we garner input through many stakeholders. This includes city council, the public, departments and programs, the city manager's office, and also our nonprofit organizations. It also includes information and input from our internal assessments, approved plans, again, such as Elevate Las Cruces, and the available funding that we have. As mentioned by Mr. Scott Marr, his pilot program parallels that of the CIP, or the Capital Improvement Program. That is kicked off in October with all departments and nonprofits and those wanting to submit for projects. That goes through December, where a committee prioritizes and then inserts into the budget as we start that in January. Between January and May, we have meetings with councils to review those projects on the CIP. It also includes the public hearing, such as what we're doing today, and then ultimately will be approved by council in May. As Ms. Leanne Demush had mentioned, this year's budget approval, which will include the budget and the CIP, will be going to council on May 17th. Once the CIP is approved, Then, as I'd mentioned, those projects that are wanting to be eligible to participate for legislative funding in 2022 will be entered into the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Plan in the state's database. This process is a cyclical annual process, and the document is a living document as we make changes with either budgets coming in or budgets being completed for projects as they move through the year. I'd like to go over some of the funding sources with you as well. We do have bonds and loans. That stems from multiple sources, such as our street improvements, flood control, utility, hold harmless gross receipts tax, voluntary assessment district, and also New Mexico Finance Authority loans. Next, we also have our local taxes. That is identified from our 2 mil levy, our 1/4% GRT, or gross receipts tax, and also our EGRT, or environmental gross receipts tax. There's also state and federal funding sources that we have. We have a community development block grants, we have state and federal grants, and also state appropriations. Lastly, we have fees and services. These come in the forms of utility rates and impact fees. Next, I'd like to go over some of those changes for the FY22 CIP for the process and the final product. First, we've had a new organizational structure within the city of Las Cruces. So in light of some of these changes, the organization will now have departments and programs on the CIP. This is a change from last year, as only departments were shown. Next slide. As you can see, some of those departments are still listed, as well as those programs that are now listed on the CIP. For example, we have economic development as a department, and then we have Las Cruces Airport as a program. All of these will be now shown on the CIP for their projects. Additionally, we also have South Central Solid Waste Authority, who is also going to be joining the CIP for this fiscal year. Now, the reason they are joining is because they are wanting to seek legislative funding for equipment purposes. As such, they will be incorporated into the public works portion of the CIP. So again, welcome to South Central Solid Waste to the CIP. Now I'd like to go over some of the revised prioritizations that we made in our matrix criteria. This matrix is used to rank projects, and this is what the committee will review and propose to be ranked as projects and funding is available. So I'd like to go over a couple of these changes from last year. Although you may see that there are a lot of items or criteria that are the same, there is some that are new. For example, our community benefit. That was there before. However, we improved the criteria to include the improvement of living standards, the creation of permanent jobs, promotion of equity, increased access to resources and recreation. We also have plan alignment. This placed a lot more focus on those plans approved by council, such as Elevate Las Cruces and the Active Transportation Plan, among others. The one that I'm really excited about and want to let everyone know is we did add one for sustainability and water conservation. This will rank the projects based on the level of water consumption, carbon emissions, and contribution to the ecological process. We also have those others down below, which were still included in the criteria last year. However, I still want to point out one more before we move on, and that is scheduling. This criteria will allow those projects that are ready to start immediately, or what we call shovel ready. So once funding is available, they are ready to start immediately. Next, I'd like to go over what the CIP document looks like. This is the first page of the document. As you can note, in the far left column, you'll have project title. Then you will have the department or program. Those will have the projects listed that are under their responsibilities. The next column, you will have what's called the funded capital projects column. Now, this is the column that shows those projects funded in this next fiscal year. Again, this is still proposed. It has not been approved by council. The next remaining years that you see from FY 2023 to FY 2027 are those projects that are scheduled in the future but are not funded. And these are the projects that are entered into the ICIP database if they are seeking legislative funding. And lastly, the column at the very far right under funding sources identifies the type of source that that project will be funded by. Moving on, we have Appendix A. Appendix A is a portion of the CIP that just calculates and shows all of the newly funded projects. So any program department that has a newly funded program in FY22 will be calculated here in this appendices. Our next appendix, Appendix B, is the total. This will have the totals for all projects of all departments and programs listed by those types of projects. We do have 4 categories of projects. We have newly funded, we have carryover, we have annual, and then future. One of the other new changes that we have in our appendix is we wanted to separate and show those projects that are funded through impact fees, or more specifically in this case, park impact fees. So any project that has a funding source, and again, that's the column all the way to the right, that identifies park impact fees, or PIF, P-I-F, as part of the funding source, will be listed here on this appendix. We also did the same thing for the TID, or the Tax Increment Development District. Again, those projects that have a funding source within the TID, again to the far right, are listed in this appendix. Now I'd like to go over a couple notations for everyone. So what we have is, I mentioned that some projects are eligible for legislative appropriations or funding. Once the state legislature approves those requests, they are placed on the CIP. However, they are placed on the CIP in the FY 2023 or the first unfunded column. The reason for that is because although the state has approved the appropriation, City Council has not accepted that fund or that grant. Once that grant is brought before council and approved, then those monies will be moved into the funded column and the CIP will be amended at that same meeting. If you can note under the project title, in this instance, we do have a notation under that project, scoot all the way to the right, that says 2021 legislative appropriation, and in FY23, it has the amount of $464,000, which was approved by this latest legislative session. Now, here are some of those legislative priorities or projects that were approved by the legislature. As you can see, in this legislative session, the East Mesa Roads and Drainage was approved, Madrid Avenue, the Mesilla Valley Community of Hope, Casa de Peregrinos, Food Rescue Warehouse. We also have the Las Cruces Airport Passenger Terminal, Public Safety Regional Radio Communication Systems, which is the example listed down below. We also have the Brannigan Cultural Center improvements, and lastly, the wastewater septic systems. So with that, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Leanne Demush, our budget officer, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This is my contact information, Leanne Demush. I'm the Chief Budget Officer. This is my email address. This is our URL address that we have our proposed budget at. If we have anybody on the line who has any questions, I do not see. You can raise your hand if you have any questions. Mr. Famasio, I think, is the only one that's on the call for today. But if there are no questions, please email us. David and Scott and I are here. We will reach, if you have questions for us, please email, and we will try to answer them as fast as we possibly can. And with that, I will ask, I guess, Adrian Guzman with PIO to end our meeting for today. I do not see any questions, Adrian. So.
Thank you.